Tuesday night, and here we are getting back into the Bible. Welcome to a flawed man's reading of the Bible. We are still in Genesis, and we are starting up with a figure that I have a lot of fondness for. Childhood, someone I looked up to in childhood in the Bible, and this is going to be Joseph, the son of Jacob. But before we get into that, we're going to do a quick rehash of where we're at. And I'm going to do my normal thing, which is share this to my personal page so many people look at it. And is it showing up yet? It's not showing up yet. Come on, guys. Get it up there. Give me live. Anyway, so we've got Jacob going. We've been discussing him and his issues and plights and actions and everything. And I think what I've been telling you about recently is that I've been kind of warming to Jacob. When I first started this, I was a little hostile to him. He comes off as not the greatest guy. He does some pretty he has a questionable account in the Bible. He does not account well for himself. He is doing the wrong things. He's looking out for number one, and you're not a very honest guy, especially when it comes to dealings matters with his family. Which at that time, family was the most of what you had, and he's abusing it for his own personal gain. But as Jacob goes along, he doesn't necessarily get any better, but he does have a moment where he sits down and prays to God. And he has this moment of humility where he goes to God. Now, he hasn't been disobedient to God at this point. We don't really see a part where we haven't had any moments yet where he has been disobedient to God. What we've seen is that he's just been kind of a jerk to everybody else. But he comes to God right before he meets his brother, who has said next time he sees him, basically, he's going to kill him. He says to God, I am not worthy of all the blessings you've bestowed upon me. And, just please be with me. And at that point, God eventually shows up and calls him Israel. And Israel is the foundation of the Christian faith, not just the Jewish faith, not just the Hebrews, the Christian faith, because we are derived from the Jewish faith. Jesus was a Jew. And so, basically, I don't mean to say it in such a simplistic form, but what are we as Christians if not Jews who believe in Christ as our Lord and Savior and believe in Him as a part of God? All the other stuff kind of gets wrapped in there, minus some of the other stuff that some of the Jewish faith believes in that's kind of outside of what we do. But we derive out of that religion. So, and where does that religion point back to? Points back to, King David, and before that Moses, and before that Joseph, and before him his dad Jacob, who has become Israel. And I think you could easily find more righteous men. His father was a more righteous man. His grandfather was a more righteous man, and his son Joseph, much more righteous man. Those are people that God could have easily chosen to name Israel, but He doesn't. He chooses probably the most flawed man of the bunch, and in that sense, you can take away that perhaps God is setting things up for us to understand that He knows that this nation is set up in a flawed manner by flawed men, and so that even with that, if we come to Him with humility, we will still be blessed. Not necessarily blessed with materialistic things or great life or easy, a life of ease, but blessed in that we have His favor, and that we are welcome to come to His house, and that we're opening our hearts to Him. So that I think that's very poignant because, like I said, God could have picked a number of folks that are not Jacob, and what we see is him picking him out of everybody, and and we talk about his brother Esau, and his brother Esau maybe not as steadfast enough, and maybe not as faithful to God. So this is why Esau does not get the things that maybe we would think from a work ethic standpoint, or a moral standpoint, that Esau might be more deserving. But from a faithfulness standpoint, Jacob's the better man. That's that's the way it appears. I could easily be wrong. I will be open on many things in my interpretations and thoughts on the Bible. I can be wrong about this, but this is just me reacting to what I'm reading, and we'll go from there. We'll go from there. So, without further ado, we are going to get into Genesis chapter 37. We are coming towards the end somewhat towards the end of Genesis. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully Streamlabs doesn't crash. It doesn't. I set this up before. I set this up this time before I turned it on because that's when it's been crashing, when I've tried to set it up on the fly. Joseph's dreams. So Joseph, a little bit of background before if you remember, Jacob had 2 wives, which he had children with, and it became some sort of competition over who could have the most kids. And what is it? Leah, his first wife, but it wasn't the wife he wanted. I guess he loved her somewhat, but not as much as Rachel. Is it Rachel? It's Rachel Rebecca. I can't. It's too many R's for me to take a peek there. Anyway, the other wife. Let's call her Rachel for now. Just reading from over here. Anyway, Rachel Rachel gives birth to 2 kids. One of them, her last one, she dies in childbirth, and that's Benjamin. But her first one is Joseph, and it was a long time before she was able to have kids. For the most part, it was Leah having kids, and then because Rachel couldn't have any kids, she gets. Gosh, this is bothering me. So I'm gonna fix this real quick. Yeah. Okay. Rachel. Yeah. No. Wait. Yep. Okay. All right. Rebecca was Jacob's. No, Rebecca was Isaac's mom. Or Rebecca was Isaac's wife, Jacob's mom. Rachel was Jacob's second wife, the one he immediately fell in love with before he married Leah. Leah was a trick. So, Leah has a bunch of sons. Rachel doesn't have any. Rachel says, maybe I'll get my servant to have my kids for me, and then I can keep up with Leah. So she has Jacob have kids with her servant, and then Leah says, oh, okay, well, I'll just get my servant in this as well. So she gets Jacob to have kids with her servant. So we've got 12, and all in all ends up being 12 kids with 4 different moms. What could possibly... I'm sure there's no drama, competition, resentment, any of that stuff going on. Everybody's just one big happy family, right? Well, as we can see, Leah and Rachel seemed like they had a very strained relationship to begin with. Who knows? And the servants don't seem to have much status in the accounts here. So, I mean, you've got a lot of kids. They're probably, sizing each other up by what order they were born and to whose mom they were born. Well, Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel. And so Jacob loved him the most. No dysfunction whatsoever, right? Joseph's dreams. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah, and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. Okay. He's calling, all right, Bilhah and Zilpah are the servants of Leah and Rachel, but he's calling them his father's wives. Okay. Might be a translation issue here, but maybe he did marry them. Anyway, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Keep tattling, Joseph. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Understandable. Look, there's a side of my family that plays favorites, and it's kind of a running joke with us. But at the same time, because we had a family member who was openly playing favorites, and we all joked about it, and it was all kind of funny. But at the same time, it kind of hurts when you're not high on the list. And I went from high on the list, and then my attitude over time put me low on the list because I was a troublemaker, and I was sarcastic, and I don't. It's difficult for me to deal with certain things, and so when I talked back or whatnot, I got bumped down the list to the point where I was next to the bottom, which I didn't particularly care about, but I'd come to terms with that. Some of the other family members had not, so it can be difficult, especially when you're at a family gathering and someone is, not being nice and not saying nice things about you because you're not high on the favorability list. I can only imagine. Now, that's not from me to a parent. That's not my relationship with a parent. But I can imagine as bad as if it felt what I imagine it could be feeling like as an extended family member. I can only imagine what it would feel like if you were already fighting for your father's attention and maybe even your mother's attention to a degree. But if your father's attention, you've got 11 other male siblings that you're jockeying for position with, and there is a level of favoritism. There's a level of favoritism there, and then one is held in high regard, in the highest regard. There's probably some resentment there. Should they be doing that? No. Is it understandable that they are? Yes. It's in human nature to be like that. Jealousy is a big thing, especially when it comes to family relations. Whose fault is this? It's Jacob's. Also, it's kind of natural. I hear some people have favorite kids. I don't. With my kids, I don't have a favorite. There are things I love about both of them. I enjoy the difference because there's one of my kids that I'm so similar to that I enjoy that. But there is another one that I'm so different from, and I enjoy that because it is so different. So it's the uniqueness of sharing experiences with someone who's similar, and then sharing experience with someone who's not, and their outlook is very different. But I know that sometimes secretly, you should never openly show favoritism, and this might be a story that you can relate to. So Jacob, or Israel, let's call him Israel. Israel loved Joseph more than anyone, so he gets him this coat, right? And if you've ever seen the play, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dream Coat, it's a very beautiful coat. It's very ornate. It's very showy. And, Joseph's going to wear it. Who wouldn't wear a nice coat, right? Yeah, I know, right, Timothy? It's good to be the firstborn sometimes. And it's so if you've got a nice coat, you're going to wear it, right? My dad gave it to me. I'm going to wear it, and so it's not Jacob, it's not Joseph's fault that he's wearing this around, but when he does wear it, everybody sees it, and they all know why he got it, because he's the favorite. And there we go. Joseph had a dream, and now apparently earlier they talking about how he's tattling on him. He bought a bad report about them. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Okay. Maybe it appears that his dad is understanding that Joseph's got a gift. But let's go back. Let's go back to where we talked about where Joseph had a dream and that he's tattling on him. I think there's two ways that you can follow Joseph's story. One, you can follow it as Joseph knows he's the favorite, and he's kind of a butt about it, right? You know, he's showing he kind of strutting around. Look at my coat. I'm the great. Look at these dreams that I'm having. Hey guys, look at these dreams. Y'all are all gonna be bowing down to me, and all your corn and all your livestock and all your stars and all this stuff. They're all bowing to me. I'm the best. This is my dream. This is just this dream I had. He's not even saying it to come to pass, but a lot of times there, especially back then, God appeared to people in dreams. God shows things to people in dreams, and especially back then, people put a lot of stock in what was going on in dreams. So he shares it to him. So there's one way to take Joseph as he's kind of being arrogant about being the favorite. The other way that you can take Joseph's story is that he's kind of just going around. He's just an innocent guy. He doesn't really understand, because he's the favorite. Maybe he doesn't see that he is incredibly favored. That he is the golden child, because he's just walking around. He doesn't have to compete for his father's attention. He just gets it. So he's not as aware of what's going on around him. He gets this nice present from his dad. Oh yeah, cool. I love this. I'll wear it. I had this dream. Hey guys, I had this dream last night. It was really weird. And maybe he is the innocent guy here, because Joseph, by his account, appears to be a genuine, honest, good guy. But at the same time, it's difficult to believe that when you read the text like this, that he might not be. There might not be some biting, bragging going on here, and perhaps why his siblings hate him might be a mix of the two. He's so aloof about his status that his brothers hate him about it. He's so aloof about it that he comes across as bragging, and like I said, it breeds resentment, and whose fault is it ultimately? There is some blame for the sons, but really, it's Jacob. Like, if something bad happened, you can always, it's Jacob. If Jacob's involved, it's Jacob. It's Israel. He's the blame. He did something wrong, because he's not he does rebuke him here. But he's also, Jacob's not stupid either. Jacob's not stupid. He sees that something's going on with these dreams. Joseph's sold by his brothers. That's pretty direct. Now his brothers has gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he sent him off to the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved on from here, the man answered. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Things are getting pretty real right now. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Here comes, look, you don't even have a name at that point. You're all brothers. I know there's 12 of you. You're all brothers. Hey, here comes that guy. Let's kill him, throw him into a well, and then tell Dad, the dingoes ate your baby. When Reuben heard this, I believe Reuben's the oldest. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Well, do not shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Okay, so the oldest is, he's reading a room, right? And maybe Joseph doesn't know how to do this, and maybe, again, this goes to his aloofness. Joseph can't read the room. Reuben can, and Reuben is saying, okay, things are getting out of control. I need to get this under control before my little brothers kill this one. And he said, all right, well, let's do it as a prank, right? Let's throw him into the well and leave him there, right? And then I think Reuben's planning to come back and rescue him, and just as a, hey man, maybe he's gonna sit him down and have a heart to heart with him about his standing in the family. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Gosh, how deep was that thing, man? They threw him in there? Did they put him in there? As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and do not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. Right, we shouldn't kill our brother. Let's sell him as a slave. That's love. This is Judah saying this. So where's Reuben at this? Me like Reuben's like, okay, well we're gonna throw him into a well. I'm gonna come back here and get him later. Now they're like, let's sell him. Reuben's got to be like, So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. What's the going rate for a brother right these days? 20 shekels of silver. When Reuben returned to the cistern, Reuben's not there. Okay. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn now? Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. And then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All of his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Well, Joseph's just getting passed around. Reuben ends up, clever plan, Reuben. Good job, being the older one, trying to come up with something that's keeping the peace a little bit. Didn't work out the way you wanted. And look at Judah over here. Judah's going to have his own problems in a moment. But we're going to leave Joseph temporarily, because the Bible gets really random. Judah and Tamar. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with them. Hang on. I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. Let's go back to this. Reuben gets his plan. Comes back. Joseph's gone. Goes to his brothers. What's going on? Why isn't he at the bottom of the well? Oh, yeah, we sold him. Hey, look, we got 20 shekels. There's 11 of us now. Let's split them, 2 ways, I guess, and then somebody in the end gets... Well, I think that Benjamin's probably not there, so there's probably just 10 of them. So they're like, everybody gets 2 shekels, two silver shekels. Here's yours. And now he's like, well, what are we going to do now? We're going to come back. No Joseph. So they get there. So they come up with this idea. They kill one of the livestock and throw the blood on him. There's no CSI. There's no DNA testing or whatnot. They're, blood's blood. Throw it over this nice jacket, coat, cloak, whatever that Joseph had, and give it to their dad and be like, we found this. Is this your jacket? Israel recognizes it and says, oh no. And, obviously suspects the worst. So Joseph is presumed dead at this point. Presumed dead by everybody, not his brothers, who are sitting there spending their money. Or not spending their money. I wonder what Judah would spend his money on. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went to stay down with a man of Adullam named Hira. There, Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her and made love to her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, who was named Man, things are progressing quickly. She conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. She gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. Getting busy, man. It was at Kazib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. What'd you do, Did something wrong, so she's dead, or he's dead. Then Judah said to Onan, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother. A little awkward, but not quite so awkward for the time period. It'd be awkward these days. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also. Woo! A little explicit there. There's some context missing here. Not necessarily part of the larger picture, but it would be interesting reading this to know what exactly was going on there. So I think it was, Onan was not being a faithful husband. There was probably some instructions that aren't detailed or communicated here. Whatever he did pissed God off, and you got him. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up, for he thought he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. Okay, so you'll be a widow, but I got one of my other kids can be your husband too, but he's not old enough yet. And Judah's sitting there thinking, I guess my sons are a little bit like me. The guy who sold his brother into slavery. Maybe they're a little bit like me and piss God off. My youngest son might do the same thing and might not make it. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hira the Adullamite went with him. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, odd, and then sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that, though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. That's a Old Testament way of making a pass at a woman. You just walk up and go, hey, let me sleep with you. With a veil, she's got a veil on. Better to inspect the goods first, or then you would have found out this situation is going to get real awkward real fast. And what will you give me to sleep with you? She asked. Now she knows who it is. I'll send you a young goat from my flock, he said. Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it? She asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord, and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. Well, there we go. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. I guess she kept the veil on the entire time. That's weird. Maybe this seems weird. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adullamite, in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there, where's the shrine prostitute who was beside the road and everything? Where's that whore at? Where's the hooker? There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, they said. So he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here. Then Judah said, let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you didn't find her. So he said, well, I tried to pay her, but she can keep what she's got. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, is guilty of prostitution. And as a result, she is now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death. And as she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said, and she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. Now when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, so the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, this one came out first. But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, so this is how you have broken out. And his name was Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. They were fighting to get out. This is a very random, almost kind of one-offish story. What I don't understand is, look, Judah's first two kids apparently do some pretty wicked stuff and get killed by God. This stuff down here happens. Doesn't exactly seem, for lack of a better word, kosher. And yet all this stuff is allowed to happen. I mean, I figured, look, he's soliciting prostitution. He doesn't know it's his daughter-in-law. His daughter-in-law knows who he is, and then gets kind of uppity about it when he's going to put her to death for being a prostitute. Which is funny, right? You're sleeping with prostitutes, but when your daughter-in-law is a prostitute, you're going to have her killed. Judah's finding new and interesting ways to be a jerk. He's thinking, like, Jacob's got problems. Judah's worse. So here we'll close out with this. This is a very important story. This is good. Now this is what I'm saying comes to Joseph's character, and why I think that while it seems much more believable that Joseph was a little arrogant in his family with his family dynamic. I think that the Joseph actually is the aloof, just naturally to a fault, truthful and honest, and nice guy. This is where we're at. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of the Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph, always good, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Now, reminder, I mean, we've had dealings with the Egyptians in the past at this point, and they have been open to the idea of the existence of God and very smart in using that to their advantage, or basically not getting in the way and saying, look, if this guy's got God's favor, then it's good to kind of either send him on his way and don't get involved with it, or we'll use it to our advantage, just by proximity to a man who's blessed, that you will be blessed. Very smart. I mean, Egyptians had a great empire. They didn't get it because they were dumb. Potiphar put him in charge of his household and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. See? The blessings of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Hey, that's nice. You've got an employee who is taking care of everything. And not only taking care of everything, he is multiplying your investments and your wealth and your success. So all you got to do is basically go out, be captain of the guard, come back and eat, right? Food, dinner's on the table when you get home. Everybody loves that. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and while his master's wife took notice, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. "Be gone, thought." Good job, Joseph. Say no. So if my assumption here, Potiphar's captain of the guard, he's wealthy, successful. He's probably got a decent looking wife. Joseph's a handsome man. He's blessed by God. He's probably, just a naturally charismatic. Well, I say naturally charismatic. He wasn't naturally charismatic with his brothers, but he was good looking enough that he caught her eye, and so she is tempting her, attempting to seduce him, and he is like, "No thanks, lady. Your husband is my boss. He's been very good to me, like very good to me. How could I? I'm not going to do that. That would be a betrayal of his trust and a sin against God." And end of story. Boom. Conversation over. Thought patrolled. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." Awful. Can't trust her. Can't trust these ladies sometimes. Loose women running around. She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him this story. "That Hebrew slave you bought us came to me to make sport of me, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Well, now, Joseph's getting the raw end of the deal. First casualty of Me Too, of Me Too when nothing actually happened. This is an unfortunate fortunate thing that happens to people who are honest. Oftentimes, just because you are an honest person, that doesn't. This is not a reason to not be honest. This is not a reason not to try to be innocent. But sometimes you just can't avoid things, and it's a reminder that being good is not going to keep you away from run-ins with people who are not good, who are not honest, who are not selfish. Potiphar's wife, in this case, she's very selfish. She's not worried about her vows. I mean, I don't know how. Apparently they take marriage seriously enough there, but she's not taking it very seriously. She sees somebody, she wants him, And she continually tries to seduce him. He continually says no, and so finally he has to literally physically run away from her, get out of his clothes or out of his cloak, and run off to get out of sight from her. And she's probably pretty embarrassed, pretty put off. And now we have a woman scorned, and this woman scorned is going to scorn him heavily. So Master comes home. She says, "This Hebrew," which is probably a slur at that time. This Hebrew is, has, basically tried to have his way with me, tried to seduce me, but I screamed because my virtue was in question. My virtue was at risk, so I screamed. And when I screamed, he ran off. He ran off. But you need to do something with this. Look at how he treated me. And then Potiphar, being the his pride's probably hurt a little bit. I guess he believes her. Maybe he doesn't know how. I mean, this is often, maybe he thinks the best of his wife. He believes her. He has no reason not to. And he believes in Joseph. I mean, it's like, oftentimes you wonder. There's always a fear sometimes that when you do trust somebody with so much that eventually they're going to take advantage. Well, he probably had just assumed Joseph took advantage finally. So Potiphar is pretty influential, pretty powerful. Captain of the guard, you piss him off, you're going to end up in jail. And so that's where he's at. And now he's not just in any jail, he looks like he's in the royal jail. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. So he showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those who held them all those held in the prison. And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Hey, look, you do a job, you do it well, eventually you're going to do this. And Joseph, again, kind of honest, kind of aloof, I'm thinking, but at the same time, diligent, does a good job, and has God's favor. When you've got those things going for you, you're going to impress people. And so this is where we're going to leave Joseph tonight. Joseph, we're going to leave this evening in jail. Sorry, Joseph. Sorry to leave you in jail. We're not going to continue your story tonight. You're going to have to stay the night in jail. Please be safe. Please stay away from any prisoners who might want to take advantage of you. We love you. But the Lord's with you, so I'm sure nothing bad will happen to you, right? We will have to find out tomorrow night. In the meantime, guys, this is one of my favorite stories, I keep saying stories, favorite accounts in the Bible, and I think that Joseph is a person that we can all model our life after, not from necessarily his origins, but how he handles things. He's been sold into slavery, doesn't let him get he's been sold into slavery by his brothers, doesn't let them get the better of him. He could go into a deep depression, be sullen, not do anything. No, this is my situation, I'm going to make the best of it. And literally does make the best of it. With God's help. Literally does make the best of his situation. Then, again, he literally gets Me Too'd into prison unjustly. And he could, again, just lay down in prison and just sulk and whatever. No, I'm going to make the best of this situation. So he does. And he literally does that. Again, the Lord is with him. Joseph's a good guy. Joseph's a guy who isn't letting other people get the better of him, and he's staying faithful to God as well. We can see that when he's tempted. He said one of the things he brings up: how could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Didn't just say I can't betray my master. He's saying he can't betray his master, and he can't betray his real master, which is God. So, good things to take away from that. And it's also another thing when you're in parts of your life where you feel like you did the right thing, no good deed goes unpunished. There's two people in the Bible that this is. I take that back. There's more than that. Joseph's a good person. Joseph's the best I think of. No good deed goes unpunished, especially with these things. He's doing the right thing. He's not doing anything wrong. But bad things are happening to him. Bad things might happen to you while you're doing the right thing. But are you doing the right thing so that good things will happen to you? Or are you doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do? Remember that. And remember that when moments of truth come and you can either do the right thing or the wrong thing. And the wrong thing might make things in your life much easier, and the right thing might make things much worse. But remember, are you doing it for a reward, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? Keep that in mind, and understand that just because bad things are happening to you, it's not because the Lord doesn't like you, or that you've done something wrong to tick him off, or that for some reason he's forsaken you and allowed these things to happen to you. Bad things are going to happen, and worse things might happen to you than this. But I think the severity of what happens illustrates that very bad things can happen to you. Don't let it get the better of you. Don't let we talked about it last night when I was talking about churches. Don't let somebody else's faithlessness or problems with the church keep you from getting salvation. Don't let obstacles in your life, events in your life, troubles, tribulations keep you away from salvation. Same thing here. Guys, be faithful. I love you. Praying for you. And you guys, I'll see you in the next episode where we'll continue Joseph's story.